Kia ora koutou. Welcome everyone to our second GEOTalk for the year. Thank you for coming along to this talk today from our wonderful presenters, Sophie and Faye. Sophie Briggs is a lecturer at the Geology department at the University of Otago, Ōtākou, Whakaihu, Waka. I'm still learning that one. And Dr. Faye Nelson, who is a researcher and manages the Otago Paleomagnetic Research Facility, also at the Geology department at the University of Otago. And today they'll be going to be sharing with us their awesome work doing From Rocks to Tots to Magnetic Leaves Evolution of a Participatory Geoscience Project. So over to you, Sophie and Faye. Kia ora.
Kia ora, thank you, Jenny. Ko Sophie Briggs tōku ingoa.
Ko Faye Nelson tōku ingoa.
And thanks very much to Jenny and Elmars for having us today, and thanks to the geoed community for being here for this talk. So today, Faye and I are going to talk about our project, which started off as Rocks for Tots. And we're going to share a little bit about how it has evolved and where it's taken us since its inception in 2020, we think. that time was a bit of a blur, but that's where things really started there. So before we start, we just wanted to acknowledge the many people who have participated in this project along the way. So it's definitely been a team effort. This includes all of the early childhood education centres and schools that have been involved in the project, and more recently postgraduate and undergraduate student researchers as well. Okay. So as I said, this project kind of started as a project called Rocks for Tots, which had the overall goal of encouraging geoscientists to go ahead and give it a go, doing outreach at Playcentres and community kindies and kōhanga reo, so early childhood centres, which is not a age group that I guess we don't think a lot of outreach happens in those places. I'm sure some definitely does, but generally when we're doing outreach, we tend to direct it towards high schools. So yeah, our main goal was to, I guess, go ahead and do this ourselves, communicate about our experience, and encourage other people to do the same. So we focused on Playcentres, community kindies, and kōhanga reo, but we also engaged with local rural schools and local urban schools as well. This tree maps out our outline of our talk. So starting off with Te Kākano, the seed, we'll just kind of introduce why we did this project and where our inspiration came from, how it evolved into Rocks for Tots, how different funding sources have helped this project flourish, and where it is going now, which is the magnetic leaves, Ōtākou magnetic leaves area.
Yeah, so the seed of Rocks for Tots was planted by a play center course on Tikanga called Te Kākano, the seed. So I started going to our local play center 2 days a week with my son, Isaac, when he was about 14 months old. And I was also working part-time, managing the Paleomagnetic Research Facility here. And so at Playcentre, one of our tasks was to design a bilingual activity reflecting an element of tikanga, and I chose Natanga Tuku Ihu, intergenerational transfer of knowledge. And one of the resources that was provided in the course was this resource kit for student teachers, and we've provided the link here, and we'll probably put that in the chat as well. And I really recommend if you're wanting to do some bilingual outreach to check these out, because they have the wonderful examples of some, so here we have some science words. So Ōtākou, magnet, and then it talks about how we all have a role to play as transmitters of knowledge. So that's the kind of a reflection of this tikanga. And they also, in the little brochure, they also talk about some activities like nature tables, trips to local places like museums and treasure boxes. So what I did was I took an activity, which we'll talk more about later, and it involved a piece of kit that we actually had at the lab here, a Bardington magnetic susceptibility meter. And so I tried applying this activity that was developed in Liverpool in a New Zealand context. So the words in the speech bubble here are the words of our wonderful Play Center educator, Roz, and she came up to me and she said, out of the blue, he Ōtākou, and I just took me a minute, and then I realized what she was saying, and it was just a really transformative moment. Just having this connection between the kind of a bicultural setting and my work, which went way beyond any workshop that I'd ever attended. Yeah, it was really meaningful. So,
And what does this mean? Yeah.
So is it magnetic?
Right.
And so yeah, so we'll talk more about the rock or chalk activity, but it's all about testing whether something is magnetic or not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is kind of where our inspiration came from. I don't have a child in Playcentre, but Faye does. So Faye kind of introduced me into this community. And I guess we saw three key opportunities with at the early childhood education stage of learning. First of all, kids of this age are naturally very curious. There is already a big focus at ECEs on engaging with natural surroundings, which is great for geoscience because that's a lot of what we're about as well as a discipline. And the third key opportunity is that at ECEs, there's generally, especially at play centres, quite a lot of family involvement in the children's learning. So we saw, engaging with kids, we saw that as a good way to actually engage with parents too and the wider whānau community as well. So those are the kind of the opportunities that we wanted to take advantage of in this work. And so Faye sort of came along and pitched this idea for Rocks for Tots to me in the department tea room one day. And that's kind of where it all started. And got me on board. And so this is kind of just a little bit about our backgrounds that's relevant to the talk. Do you want to start, Faye?
Yeah, so I'm originally from Canada, and my first geology job was working for the Federal Geological Survey of Canada. So doing mapping in northern BC and the Yukon with a real community focus. So always thinking about, what this was meaning to the community. And then I also had some experience in industry in the Klondike in the Yukon. And then I came to New Zealand and moved more into a marine geology research. But even back in Canada, I had the paleomagnetism kind of focus. So yeah.
Yeah, and I was an undergrad here at Otago University in the geology department. I had a short stint working over in Western Australia in exploration geology, and then decided that I wanted to go back and do more research. So I did my PhD at the University of California and spent a lot of time in the lab on mass spectrometers, like the one that you see there. But after my PhD, I came back to New Zealand and I was really interested in developing my skills, kind of sharing my science with the community. So I took a couple of random jobs. The first one was working as an interpretation ranger for the Department of Conservation, which actually did have interpretation rangers for a while there. I'm not sure if they still exist. So that's me in front of the Robbery Glacier. And then I did a short stint working as a geoeducator for the Waitaki Whitestone Geopark, which is now a UNESCO Global Geopark. So that was the early days. And through that geopark role, I ran an Unlocking Curious Minds project, working primarily with the kids out at Duntroon School and taking them over to Vanished World once a fortnight to do geoscience activities there. I did that by myself though. So, and one of my takeaways from that experience was that it's both difficult and less enjoyable when you're trying to spearhead something alone. So when Faye approached me about this project idea that she had and kind of pitched the idea of working together on it, I thought that sounded really good to me. So yeah, those are the kind of background experiences that we're bringing in to Rocks for Tots. So just a little bit about how this project came about. After the idea got put forward that we'd do a project together, Faye had been doing some pilot work at the Playcentre with Isaac and all of the tamariki there. But we decided to get really serious and actually collect some data and do some work to really figure out what are the impacts of this outreach and these experiences that we're providing to ECEs. So really kind of pivoting into a bit of social science research, which neither of us really have backgrounds in. So that was a little bit intimidating and kind of a learning curve for us. And part of that pivot was actually filling in an ethics approval form through the University of Otago to do our research, since the research is involving, human subjects, something that you have to do. So that was a very new experience for us, but it was worthwhile because it made us kind of really focus down our goals and our research questions. So our research questions kind of started off being, how effective is geoscience outreach when it's delivered at the preschool level, and what are the impacts of this outreach, both for the geoscientists who are delivering it, the learners who are experiencing it, the educators who are involved, so that's ECE educators, and for whānau, so the wider community. So very much kind of a social science spin there. But at the same time, this is in early 2023, we decided to put our project in, put a proposal in for Curious Minds funding. So Unlocking Curious Minds was a MB funded initiative which provided grants to various projects to basically engage New Zealanders with science, particularly hard to reach communities. And one branch of this Unlocking Curious Minds funding was the participatory science platforms, which were, I think there were 3 of them. One was located in Taranaki, one was here in Dunedin, the Otago Science into Action, and I can't remember where the third one was, but maybe someone in the audience knows. And so we decided to take advantage of Otago Science into Action, participatory science platform, and apply for some funding from them. And really this branch of the Curious Minds funding had a big focus on participatory science. And we're going to go through some definitions shortly about what that means. But just to say now that the process of putting in that proposal actually really kind of drove our project in a slightly different direction again to the one that we'd started in. And it really encouraged us to come up with kind of a true science research question that all of the people involved in our project could contribute to. So that research question that we developed became, why are some rocks, soils, and leaves more magnetic than others? So that's very much, a science question that everyone can be involved in. Our first question of how effective is our outreach was very much kind of inward looking for our own reflection on how well are we doing here. But this research question is something that everybody could contribute to. And so that's kind of how those two strands came together. At the same time, this was a really productive time for us, I guess, 2023. At the same time, we teed up with the local design school at the Otago Polytech here, and they have a program where they sort of have their students act as clients for people. And so we had them, we asked them if they wanted to help us develop some resources and a logo for our project, and they did a fantastic job. And so this is just the logo that they developed for us, but you'll see some of the resources that they developed shortly. This isn't the real time, is it? Okay, hope I've covered everything there.
Yeah.
Cool. So a couple of definitions that we wanted to talk about, and these are things that we were kind of learning as we went as well, which is often how things happen. So one of our kind of, I guess we had these research questions. Why are some rocks, soils, and leaves more magnetic than others? And also, what are the benefits of doing this outreach at the preschool level? But kind of our overarching goal of our project was simply to help create or foster science citizens. So science citizens are people who consume scientific information and kind of use that to form educated opinions or make educated decisions based on that information. And I don't really need to go into why this is important. I think everybody here would agree that that's a really key thing, a key goal to try to achieve. And that's a lot of what we're doing in our university teaching as well for our students. But the term, if you switch the words around, the term citizen scientist is slightly different. So you may have heard of citizen science projects before. So a citizen scientist is someone who helps researchers either monitor or collect data. And we've mentioned that we applied for this Curious Minds funding, which was a participatory science platform. There is a slight distinction between citizen science and participatory science. Generally, with participatory science, the public or communities are more involved in more parts of the scientific method, whereas citizen science tends to be, it can be a really minor involvement, such as just collecting a sample and giving it to a scientist, and then that person doesn't have to stay committed or involved in the research all the way through. So we were sort of in this participatory science realm, trying to involve our ECEs and tamariki in as many of the stages of the research process as possible. Cool. Another little bit of background is the Te Whāriki curriculum, which is the early childhood education curriculum. Do you want to say a few things about this, Faye?
Yeah, so Te Whāriki is, you could kind of think of it as a woven mat of these principles which are empowerment, holistic development, family and community, and relationships. And then within there, you have the strands: well-being, belonging, contribution, communication, and exploration. And all of those have goals and learning outcomes. So the learning outcomes are kind of the tangible, really examples of how young children are making sense of their world and developing these really important kind of ways of learning. And
yeah, and we're showing this because this Te Whāriki curriculum, we really kind of used it as a framework actually to answer the question of how effective are our approaches to outreach with this age group, and we did that by, you know, in our experiences doing this outreach, we were looking for connections with Te Whāriki, the curriculum. So what is it about what we're doing that links to the curriculum that ECEs are already following? But another reason for showing this is that, so this is the general ECE curriculum, Te Whāriki, and there's a different one, which is specifically for kōhanga reo. And this is all in Te Reo Māori, because it's for kind of immersion, kōhanga reo ECEs. But both of them are actually bicultural frameworks. So that's how they've been designed. And both Faye and I were I guess, really impressed at the by this bicultural approach that ECE curriculum had taken, that the Ministry of Education had taken here, especially comparing it to, I guess, the stage of the journey that we're at in universities, which is, I wouldn't say as advanced as where ECEs are at in this kind of journey. So I guess we chose to try to reflect this bicultural framework in our work as much as possible. And another, I guess this is kind of an example of a source of data for assessing whether, you know, for answering our question of how effective are our approaches and what are the links to Te Whāriki. So this, what you're seeing here are two what are called learning stories. And these are essentially this is what assessment looks like in early childhood education. So generally, what kind of happens? These are created every day at Playcentres?
Yes, at Playcentres and other ECEs, these would be created for at least some children every day. So I think they would have goals. Well, yeah, that they'd try to do at least a few of these for each child per term. But yeah, so they could be individual or group.
Right.
Yeah.
And these get put together into a portfolio for that child. So it's kind of like a record of their learning that is done both by teachers but also parents at Playcentres, because the parents happen to be there physically at the Playcentre.
And they also have an educator role at Playcentres.
That's right. Yeah. So the coloured boxes that you can see here, I'm not sure if you can see my mouse, but there's one on the bottom lower left-hand corner here for the left-hand learning story, and there's 4 on the right-hand learning story. These are highlighting the specific connections to Te Whāriki, the curriculum, that were noticed during the day. That this learning story happened in. So already there's this framework for recognising links to Te Whāriki and what these ECEs do. And so we decided to, I guess, leverage that information to see how our activities were connecting with Te Whāriki. So hoping that there would be learning stories generated after our visits to ECEs, basically, and using the information that was generated there to kind of reflect on what we were doing. So this, on the left-hand side, we have a learning assessment or a learning story for rock or chalk, which is one of our activities that we'll talk about in a second. And through that, we recognized some links to Te Whāreki, and then we were able to kind of build on that experience with another activity, Search for Buried Treasure. And that kind of opened the door to different additional links to Te Whāreki. So that's quite cool. And so this is kind of a revelation to me. There's a whole area of research into learning at the early childhood level, and there's some really awesome work, particularly by this researcher Dan Lovett, around kind of how learning works at this age and how to think about it. And I found this really useful because I remember in the early days of doing these visits with Faye to the early childhood education centres, it kind of felt chaotic to me because I'm used to being in a lecture theatre and teaching in that way, or in the lab with students, very different age group, obviously, and key objectives, kind of key knowledge that I was trying to, I guess, impart, as well as skills. But when you're doing these kinds of activities in the early childhood level, the focus is a little bit different, and it's more on the process of learning than it is on what material or knowledge actually gets learned or taken away. So once I realized that, it was, I could actually see much more easily the benefits of what we were doing, right? It's not just about, at this age level, we're not trying to teach students the names of different rock types or other kind of random geological knowledge. It's more about the process. And so Dan Lovett's shared learning communities model kind of shows that a little bit. We really saw ourselves providing this role of providing the intentional experiences that the children could then, during those experiences, take what they already know and just build on it. And really our key goal here was to, I guess, foster positive ideas about science and positive associations and attitudes around geoscience specifically. And that seemed a lot more achievable than trying to impart knowledge particularly at this age range. But it's interesting because I think even at the university level, our teaching is taking a big turn and focusing a lot more on the processes of learning and the skills rather than the specific knowledge or facts that are taken away. So this is just a summary of all of the activities or experiences, if you like, that we took to early childhood education centres or engaged them in here in our geology department, because visiting for every ECE that we engaged with, we invited them to come and visit the geology department here on the campus of the University of Otago, and that was a really important part of what we were doing. But we also brought a lot of experiences to them too. So we're just going to showcase a few of those now. So rock or chalk, do you want to come to the space?
So rock or chalk started this whole thing off. So as we mentioned before, this was actually an activity developed by the Paleomagnetic Research Group in Liverpool to take to a big Royal Science Fair where they had a booth. And yeah, so it's taking this magnetic susceptibility meter. So in very simple terms, that's just a way to measure the magnetizability of a substance. So for our props, we had in sample cubes, we had some of these chocolate rocks, which you see on the screen. They're commercially available chocolates that look very much like rocks. And even I have, well, when we have our setup, even I sometimes forget which ones are chocolates and which are rocks. And then the other really important factor is choosing rocks that are quite magnetic. So you don't put quartz in for rock or chalk. So the idea is that they pick up this sealed plastic cube, make a guess whether it's a rock or a chocolate, and then they can test their guess by placing it in the magnetic susceptibility meter and pressing the M button, M for measure. And then magnetic susceptibility is it's measured by a number. So the higher the number, the higher the magnetizability. So with our rocks, we'd get, you know, numbers in the hundreds or thousands. And if it was a chocolate, it would be hopefully around 0 or maybe even negative, which would be diamagnetic. So with the really young kids, even the very young kids could kind of get a sense, oh, that's a big number. We found that this activity appeals to every age group.
Yeah, this is really our bread and butter.
Yeah.
And we've taken it to so many different community events where you know, a whole range of people engage with it. And
Teenage boys love it. Everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then of course, we do have a bowl of the chocolate rocks so people can sample the chocolate rock afterwards.
Yeah, big hit.
Yeah. And as we mentioned, we ourselves developed the buried treasure activity out of this, and that's just hooking up a different probe. So instead of the desktop or lab bench top box there that you'd place a sample into, that's hooking up the probe that can be used for like field surveys. And so that was a really nice scaffolding in that the Tamariki could try it out with rock or chalk, and then they'd see the same instrument and the same concept taken into the sandbox.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just a really cool example of how a piece of specialized scientific equipment can be used in a really approachable way and easy to understand way for something fun. So I think that there are opportunities to do this with all kinds of scientific equipment, and this is just a magnetism example.
Yeah. So you may be able to think of something that you have in your office or lab that could be adapted in a similar way.
Yeah. So we have another one of our core activities is dress up like a geologist. And so kind of our key reasons for offering this is to get across the ideas that anyone can be a geologist, and geologists can look like anyone, including you, when you're dressed up in their gear. But also, you know, we have these tools of the trade. So we provided some pretty cool stuff from Faye, actually, these Canadian geology cruiser vests.
Yeah, and that had a practical element because we could actually, you know, tie the hand lenses on with a cord and attach it to the vest so that we didn't have our stuff, you know, going to the four corners. Yeah.
So, and this is kind of where we're starting to bring in this pink box here, some of these links to Te Whāriki. So exploration is one of the key strands in the Te Whāriki curriculum. And one of the learning outcomes under this strand is playing, imagining, inventing, and experimenting, which is something that has come up as a key link of this activity. Okay, so gold panning is another one of our core activities, and this is one that we've primarily done in ECEs. Most kindergartens, Playcentres, kōhanga reo have water tables, or they're not called water, they're called water tables. water play is huge at this age, and that's really helpful to us because we were able to take resources that the tamariki were already familiar with and just bring in our specialized equipment, which was these gravels from the Arrow River, which did actually contain gold. We found out, and kids are really good at finding it, turns out. And parents too get really into this one as well. So there's part of the Arrow River that actually has a public tenement on it, so you can do recreational panning there, which is where we got our resources from. But it also contains a whole lot of magnetite sand as well, because that's part of the karst schist that's kind of part of the Aspiring Lithologic Association. So there's lots of green schist in there, which is where the magnetite comes from. And this activity we've found really, we've seen a lot of examples of this. So older kids helping out the younger kids, because it is kind of a physical thing that you've got to do, but it ties in well to our magnetism kind of theme of some of our activities. And this also links to the exploration strand from Te Whāreki, but a different learning outcome, making sense of worlds by generating and refining working theories. So we tried to use analogies to explain how gold panning actually works. So for two objects of the same size, gold is 19 times heavier than potato, for example. It'd be great to find a gold nugget the size of a potato. And that's why it settles to the bottom when you shake the gold pan with the gravel in it.
Yeah. And so gold panning does have a slightly colonial feel to it, but we in our research, we actually found that the wonderful research by Lord Carpenter, and he's written a really interesting paper. And yeah, so we found out, one interesting thing we found out was that locally here in Otago, during the gold rush era, the trail words for gold were pharaoh and red, bright, and also a word that was referencing the heaviness of the gold. So yeah, that's a really, and of course now it's known generally as kura, but yeah, I thought that was really cool little tidbit.
Yeah. So we'll just go through these other ones that kind of quickly because we've got more things to talk about. So Te Reo Maui, this is an activity where we brought in the wonderful maps that you can actually see behind me that are produced by Geoscientists. And these maps have symbols on them showing where volcanoes are, both on land and underwater, triangle symbols. So we had a lot of fun searching for those on the maps and bringing in Play-Doh to kind of create 3D versions of what was depicted in the 2D map. And this really links with the communication strand of Te Whāreki. It also had a really cool link to the kōhanga reo, which we'll bring up in a second. And here's just some examples of what we did when the ECEs came to visit the geology department. So we set up our primary kind of activity centre in the Geology Museum, which is this awesome resource that we have in the Geology Department at the University of Otago. So the students were right in one of our, I think, greatest pieces of heritage here in the Geology Department, which was wonderful. And of course, we have paleontologists actively working in the museum. So on the right-hand side there, you can see Sophie White, who happened to be working away fossil prep in the back rooms there and was able to come and talk to some of the students. These are school students here in this right-hand photo, where we're kind of expanding out from our ECE level at that point.
Yeah, so this is the voice of Lynette, who was the head teacher at the kōhanga reo that we worked with. And she just really spoke about when she was reflecting on the geology department visit and basically the whole Rocks for Tots program. She really spoke to kind of connection and empowerment. So she talked about how Geology and the geology department were new to most of their whānau, and that now they know new people in a new place, and it was really empowering to them, and they really appreciated the connection, and we really appreciated our meeting them and connecting with them as well. So you may wonder what it's like going into a Maori immersion environment, not being so what happened was that we went in with our Rocks for Tots activities, and we basically set things up and explained, for example, rock or chalk once, and then Lynette and the other kaiako and the whānau that were there just really took it on board, and then all of a sudden,
they were able to, I guess, kind of first of all come up with explanations in te reo Māori, which is what they're doing at the kōhanga reo, for the tamariki, but also kind of incorporate our activities really quickly into some concepts that they had been already covering in their learning. And we thought that was really cool, because we were a little bit nervous going in, not having the knowledge, not being able to speak or understand te reo. And so, we thought it was a really good reciprocal experience. We did bring some of our geology kupu or te reo words with us, and they really appreciated learning some of that terminology as well. And so it was a really positive experience, and we would highly recommend anybody who's thinking about doing that to get amongst it. So we have Earthquake Alley in the geology department, so we took our visitors through there as well. And this is a place, we've got a seismometer down in the basement. You can see it through a window in the floor, so it's quite a fun little tour stop in our geology department. And we follow this up with an activity on our shake table. So this is one of the devices. Oh no. That one of the resources that the Polytech School of Design students made for us. And I just want to play this video with the sound so you can kind of hear what's going on in the background.
Oh, they're all holding up really well. Oh, okay, I'll try.
They're not falling down.
They're not falling down.
Yes, what okay.
We'll put these
Do you want
on the engineering
to do an earthquake? Wow. Nice. Wow.
Hey. Go, earthquake.
So those were students from Pūrako Nui School, a rural school in just out of Dunedin. And one of the cool things that happened in that video is you might have heard the kaiako teacher say "Ruo moko go," and that's the Ruo moko is sort of like the ato, or like the earthquake kind of god of the earthquakes and movement of earth in Te Māori. So yeah, just a great example of kaiako in the moment, getting on board and drawing connections to things that kids were covering in school. Another activity we did outside during these visits was a rock and roll game, sort of a board game, going through the rock cycle, which is fun. And although we had our learning stories, we also decided to run a workshop with all of the teachers who were involved in the programs to try to learn more about what they thought the strongest connections with Te Whāriki were in our activities and through the program. And that was really useful to us. And we're trying to fashion this into a publication as we speak. So watch this space and you'll learn more about, I guess, what those outcomes were. And one of the things that we'll be discussing and looking at more in that publication is the links between Te Whāriki and graduate attributes, which are essentially the takeaways that we want university graduates to have when they leave university. And spoiler alert, there are some really strong links between them. So this is just to say that anything that we do at the ECE level is really just building a strong foundation for these kids to go on to build on that in their future education. So just kind of touching on where this project has gone since Rocks for Tots wrapped up. So that Curious Minds funding was only a year long, and so our project wrapped up, but it had so much momentum that we just could not stop it. So it's really just kept going, and the direction that it's gone in really is in the building on the participatory science side of things, which we haven't talked about very much yet. But essentially, this is what it was. So for one of the sessions that we did with all of those ECEs, that would focus on going out and collecting some leaves from the general area that we would go and test in the Paleomag lab, which you can see in the middle here, to essentially determine what their magnetic signature is. And this magnetic signature can be a proxy for pollutants, particularly vehicle-related pollution or exhaust fumes or brake wear and things like that in the environment. So, yeah.
Yeah.
We decided, well, this is inspired by, there's been a lot of work done in Europe looking at magnetism of leaves as an indicator for pollution, and not a lot of work has been done outside of Europe. So we've got a paleomagnetism lab at the University of Otago. Why not try it? So we did a lot of work trying to compare particularly leaves from roadside areas, school drop-off areas, gardens outside, play centres, things like that, and compare that to leaves from green spaces where you might not get as much traffic-related pollution, to see if we could see a difference, I guess. That was kind of one of our primary goals. And so this is what it looked like in action. We started off doing this with Ōtākou School, a local school. We had like, I don't know, over 100 students participating in this. Probably never do that again. All collecting leaves and testing them back in the lab. But we also tested some hypotheses on the ground when we were out collecting leaves as well. And we also did a follow-up session to show, to kind of share the results. Obviously, there's a lot of lab work that has to get done in the background, which doesn't involve the students because it's really time-consuming. But we really wanted to close that loop, and, being participatory science, we wanted them to invite them to be involved in interpreting the data. And they actually came up with some really useful ideas for why we were seeing hotspots, high magnetic signatures in certain places versus others that we didn't think of ourselves. So that was really, really valuable. And this has been built on really recently, just this last summer. We had 3 summer research students working with us. So these are undergraduate students at the University of Otago, working with us for like 6 to 10 weeks. And we found this really useful because with the participatory science, it just raised so many questions like, are we sampling the right leaves? Are there New Zealand native plants that would be really good pollution indicators that haven't been tested before? What factors are contributing to the different magnetic signatures in the leaves? Is it just pollution, or are we actually getting a little bit of natural magnetism from the environment as well? So Ōtākou Dunedin is based on the Dunedin volcano, and it's predominantly mafic basalt that the volcano consists of. So that's going to be, potentially there could be a lithogenic source of magnetite, for example. And so all these questions, we were able to dig into that with our research students, and they've really pushed our knowledge a lot further in this space. And I'd like to share just in the chat now, if I can. Ooh. Can I do this? I've lost my chat. meeting controls. Here we go. I'm just going to pop in here a link to, this is an ArcGIS story map that one of these summer research students, Azzy, put together, sharing our results from the project. And I'm just going to bring over, hopefully, can you see the screen biomonitoring now, or am I still sharing the same screen?
No, we can see it.
Cool. So this is just a what that story map looks like. It's got a lot of information in it, so I encourage you to look through. But this is kind of our concept here. So we're taking these leaves that have collected pollutants from the environment. We're testing them in these various ways in the lab, looking at the results and seeing what we can learn about the movement of these particulates. So this is particulate matter that's accumulated on the leaves here. And really one of the key takeaways that you'll see from looking through this story map is that roadside spaces do have a lot more magnetic particulates than green spaces. And it kind of provides, I guess, a good reason to plant lots of vegetation and encourage vegetation along roadsides, and especially at the front of houses and buildings, as kind of a filter to this traffic-related pollution that we can see. So this intensity map just shows some of the results. Each dot here is a different leaf sample that was collected by these students, and you can see the reds, or the hot spots in red here. High values are around the Highway 1, which makes a lot of sense, and also school drop-off zones. So that's kind of the direction that we're heading into with this work. But we are actually bringing it back to the participatory science, citizen science kind of a theme. So on July the 6th, the New Zealand International Science Festival is going to be happening here in Dunedin, and we're going to be running a Magnetic Leaves BioBlitz event. You might have heard of a BioBlitz before. This is a little bit of a different BioBlitz, rather than generally they're focused on, I guess, invertebrates and other things like that. And for this one, we're going to be focusing on leaves and trying to kind of crowdsource leaf samples in the Woodhall Gardens that we can then go on to test and get a more detailed picture of how these pollutants are moving around in that space. And it's a good way to just involve some parts of the community that were not engaged through the ECEs, I guess. So we're just trying to kind of broaden our scope, I suppose, in terms of our community engagement. And this is kind of timely because there has been a lot of talk, especially around winter time, about air quality and air pollution. And so we're hoping to learn enough that our work can kind of contribute to our understanding in this space, I suppose. And we're really excited to kind of bring the community along with us, which is great. So I guess that's just some examples of what community engagement can lead to, and we really want to leave some time for questions. So we'll wrap up now, and yeah, thanks very much.
Kia ora, Sophie and Faye. That was awesome. Yeah, a really lovely introduction to a lot of new concepts and terminology for those of us who maybe haven't been working so closely with the curriculum. Really interesting to learn the difference between citizen science, participatory science. Thank you so much. And congratulations on such an amazing kind of body of work. And yeah, great to hear that it's kept, like Rocks for Tots has kept going beyond the original 1-year grant and is evolving into this amazing new gig. So congratulations. I'll hand over now to members of the audience who've been tuning in today. If you have any questions, please raise your hand, either literally or virtually, and we'll put your questions to our speakers today. Yep, Karen?
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to say, having been a Curious Minds, receiver of the grant, I just think that whole MB participatory science platform was phenomenal, and much the same as yourselves. You start off, and we're now in our 10th year, and that was the impetus.
Mm.
So I do think it was a wonderful initiative.
Yeah.
But anyway, living here in Taranaki, I often think sort of almost why reinvent the wheel? You've got a wonderful concept there, be kind of quite good, obviously here in Taranaki with the iron sands, very topical at the moment. It would be kind of great to have it here. Um, you've learnt the things that work and the things that are challenging. And of course, each place is unique. But yeah, I've often thought that about those Curious Minds projects that we've kind of learnt the hard way, if you like, and have a lot of learnings. But yeah, it'd be quite good to replicate it around.
Absolutely. And I mean, like we said, that was our primary goal at the beginning, was to just do this, show that it's good, encourage other people to do it.
Yeah.
And we have some of the things that we use here are specific to the geology department at Otago and the paleomagnetism lab, but a lot of them are not, and we just drew on our available connections. So like connecting with the Polytech and having them help us make some resources.
Yeah.
Like you say, you've already got the magnetic sand. Bunch of magnets is all you need to carry out some of the activities.
Yeah, I saw those big plastic hands. They were pretty cool. Where are they from?
Oh, yeah.
The big,
There's like a handshake magnet.
The kids.
Oh,
They were
yeah.
where the magnetic sand was. What was it looked like hands, I thought they were holding with the
Yeah, it was just big horseshoe shaped magnets. And yeah, you can purchase those through kind of science stores, and most ECEs would have those as part of their kind of standard resource.
Okay.
Yeah. So I will just say, just the last little thing on your question. Hopefully our publication will be out soon, and we're going to have a big appendix with all of the kind of instructions on how to do the activities. But the other thing that I would encourage is to draw on whatever local expertise and things that you have, because that's already one of the focuses that they have in ECE, is to build local connections and place-based stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, it was brilliant. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you.
Yep.
Awesome. Kia ora, Karen. We've got a question from Ilmaz.
Kia ora. Thanks for your brilliant presentation. I really, really enjoyed it. And I guess my question is coming from a similar place. I get the impression that you guys have a real passion for this outreach, and that's awesome. And you were quite well supported by the university, and especially the geology department. And it's kind of addressing what seems to be a real pressing need is to get people understanding science at a really early age. And it's a kind of I feel like it's a real overlooked connection. But I guess in your kind of research and undertaking this, are you aware of any other kind of universities or organisation in Auckland, and not Auckland, sorry, in New Zealand, who kind of really have that sort of outreach and community connection as an integral part of the work they do, or do you still feel that that's something quite unique to what you guys have put together here with the support of Otago University?
Well, it's a really good question, Ilmaz.
I think most of our New Zealand universities do their geology departments do outreach, but there's a wide variety. I know certain ones would really focus on kind of the later years of high school.
Yeah.
I know some. I won't name names because it's been a while since I kind of looked into this, but I know one really utilizes their postgraduate students
cool.
in kind of delivering outreach. So there's a really wide variety of how universities
Mm.
do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'd say that, like, although we have had amazing support from our department, unfortunately, the new kind of strategic plans that are coming out
Yeah.
for some universities, including our own, actually don't have we don't think they have enough of a focus on community engagement at all. And in fact, they almost look like they're moving away from that to try to, just focus on bums on seats.
Yeah.
Well, there's not necessarily any profit in community
That's right.
engagement. But I really look forward to your publication, and I really want to acknowledge that what you guys, starting from that kernel of an idea, you've actually put together what looks like a really practical and useful framework that hopefully people have the confidence and they can use that to reach out to their local community and say, this has worked in Dunedin, how can we make this work for us? So awesome work, guys. Love it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I have to shoot off, so thanks so much, and thanks, Jenny, for co-hosting and organising this. And lovely to see you all. Ka kite.
Ka kite, Elmas.
Kia ora, thanks Elmas, and thank you all, and especially thank you to Sophie and Faye for your wonderful presentation today. We have recorded, so we can share that with members of the group who may not be able to make it, or for anyone who is here who would like a recap. But other than that, I'll just say kia pai tōra, everyone. Have a wonderful day, and thanks again, Sophie and Faye. Congrats on all your awesome mahi.
Thank you.
Bye.